Do you actually know what wet food does to your cat when they eat it every single day? Most owners assume it's simply a better meal option. But what's genuinely happening inside their body is something the vast majority of people have no idea about. It changes how their organs function, how they feel, and even how they behave around you. What begins happening might completely transform the way you approach feeding your cat. Here's what kicks in from day one. 1. Their body finally receives the hydration it needs. Have you ever wondered why your cat barely acknowledges their water bowl? It's not laziness, and it's not them being difficult. It's simply instinct. Cats evolved as hunters in desert environments. Their ancestors obtained almost all of their hydration directly from the prey they caught. Their thirst drive is naturally low because their bodies were never designed to drink water as a separate activity. That's how they survived in the wild. But here's where the problem begins. Most house cats eat dry kibble, which contains roughly 10% moisture. Compare that to wet food, which sits between 75% and 80%, almost identical to the moisture content of a mouse or a small bird. So when you begin feeding wet food every day, something shifts quickly. Hydration levels rise. The kidneys no longer have to work overtime, filtering highly concentrated waste. Urine becomes more diluted, which significantly lowers the risk of crystals and urinary blockages. One of the most common emergencies in cats, particularly males, a study published in the Journal of Feline Medicine and Surgery found that cats fed wet food produce considerably greater urine volume at lower concentration, which is precisely what a healthy urinary system requires. Your cat won't dramatically reduce their water intake overnight, but their body finally stops operating in a state of chronic low-level dehydration. And this is honestly the change that makes everything else on this list possible. Stay with me until the final point, though, because there's one side of daily wet food that can quietly backfire if you're not paying close attention. 2. Their weight shifts in a way you won't expect. Why do so many indoor cats struggle with excess weight, even when their owners aren't overfeeding them? It's not because cats are inherently lazy, it's because of what's actually in the bowl. Dry kibble is densely packed with carbohydrates. Some brands contain 40% or more. And cats, as obligate carnivores, have almost no biological use for that level of carbohydrate in their diet. Their bodies aren't built to efficiently convert carbs into energy, so most of it ends up stored as fat. This isn't a willpower problem, it's a food design problem. When you switch to daily wet food, the equation changes entirely. Wet food is naturally higher in protein, higher in moisture, and considerably lower in carbohydrates. That combination does something straightforward but genuinely powerful. It allows your cat to feel full on fewer calories, without you needing to weigh out every portion. A study from the Waltham Center for Pet Nutrition found that cats fed wet food were significantly more likely to maintain a lean body composition compared to those on dry diets, even when allowed to eat freely. That's because protein triggers a far stronger satiety response than carbohydrates do. Your cat actually feels satisfied rather than constantly searching for more food. So if your cat has been carrying extra weight and nothing seems to be working, the issue might not be how much you're feeding them. It might be what you're feeding them. 3. Their coat reveals the truth before anything else does. Have you ever noticed how some cats have that soft, almost impossibly glossy coat, while others feel dry and rough, no matter how consistently they're brushed? What if that had almost nothing to do with grooming? Your cat's coat is one of the most reliable indicators of what's happening inside their body. When nutrition is inadequate, the coat is the first place it shows. Dull fur, excessive shedding, flaky skin, these aren't cosmetic issues, they're signals. Wet food is naturally rich in animal-based proteins and fats, the two primary building blocks that skin and fur depend on most. Dry kibble, even high-quality varieties, undergoes such intense processing that a significant portion of those nutrients are degraded before they ever reach your cat's system. When you switch to daily wet food, most owners begin noticing a visible coat change within a matter of weeks. The fur becomes softer, shedding slows noticeably, and that greasy or dusty texture some cats carry starts to fade. One of the earliest outward signs that something deeper is genuinely improving. Research published in the Journal of Nutritional Science showed that cats on high-protein moisture-rich diets displayed measurably better coat quality and skin health compared to those on dry alternatives. The body stops rationing nutrients purely for survival and begins directing them where they actually belong. So if you've tried every brush, every supplement, and every shampoo and your cat's coat still looks off, the answer might already be waiting in the wet food aisle. 4. Their behavior around food changes completely. Does your cat start vocalizing the moment you move toward the kitchen? Do they inhale their food as though someone is about to take it from them? Most owners write that off as personality. But what if your cat isn't being greedy? What if they're simply never actually satisfied? Cats that eat dry food often develop frantic eating habits, and it has nothing to do with loving food more than other cats. It's because kibble doesn't send the right fullness signals to their brain. The high carbohydrate, low moisture content digests rapidly and leaves them feeling empty again within hours. So they beg, they pace, and they wake you at 4 in the morning because their body keeps signaling that something is missing. When you begin feeding wet food daily, that cycle starts to break down. The higher protein content triggers a genuine satiety response. The moisture adds volume to the meal, which physically expands the stomach just enough to activate the signals that communicate, "I'm done." A study in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior confirmed this directly. Cats fed high-protein diets showed reduced food-seeking behavior and were significantly less likely to display signs of frustration between meals. Your cat eats, feels genuinely full, and actually walks away from the bowl. Now, to be fair, not all frantic eating comes down to food type alone. Some cats develop speed eating as a learned behavioral habit, particularly in multi-cat households or among cats with a stressful past. In those cases, wet food helps, but pairing it with a food puzzle can make a meaningful additional difference. It slows them down and engages their natural foraging instincts, which is exactly how their brains were designed to approach eating in the first place. Once both elements are working together, the change is difficult to miss. Cats that feel consistently satisfied become noticeably calmer around food in general. The food guarding stops. The desperation fades. Mealtimes shift from chaotic to quiet. 5. The one risk most owners never consider. So if wet food delivers all of this, why would there be any downside at all? This is the part I flagged earlier, the one that can quietly backfire if you're not paying attention. Most owners open a can, scoop the contents into the bowl, and move on with their day. That makes perfect sense, but wet food doesn't behave like kibble. Kibble can sit out all day without significant changes. Wet food cannot. The moment it reaches room temperature, bacteria begin multiplying rapidly. And depending on how warm your home runs, that window can be as short as 1 to 2 hours. Cats that graze throughout the day are particularly at risk. If your cat likes to eat a little, walk away and return later. That second visit may no longer be safe. The food may look identical. It may even smell perfectly fine to you. But bacterial growth doesn't announce itself. The safe rule is simple. Never leave wet food out for more than 2 hours. If your cat hasn't finished it within that time, discard it. Any unused portion remaining in the can should be covered and refrigerated immediately. Even then, it should be used within 48 hours. One more thing most owners overlook: serving wet food, cold, straight from the refrigerator, isn't ideal either. Cats are drawn to food that's close to body temperature because it mimics the feel of fresh prey. A few seconds in the microwave or a splash of warm water brings it into the right range and makes it considerably more appealing to them. This isn't a reason to avoid wet food. Everything covered here still holds true. But the difference between wet food genuinely benefiting your cat and quietly causing problems comes down entirely to how you handle it after the can is opened. Get that part right, and you're giving your cat exactly what their body was designed to thrive on.